The Booth That Rings at Night. Halberd, 1979. The town smelled of wet leaves and gasoline, neon buzzing above empty streets. At mile 19, a glass phone booth stood beside a shuttered diner, its aluminum frame pitted with rust and its ceiling lamp humming. The handset hung heavy as a fist, and when trucks passed, the light inside flickered, as if the glass inhaled and slowly let go. People said the booth rang on windless nights even when the line was dead, and especially then. Teenagers tested their courage by waiting for the second ring, grown men mocked the stories and still took the long way home, and Riker, the gas station attendant across the road, kept fresh earplugs in his pocket and drew down his gate at 10 sharp. Evan Pike arrived after sunset with 3 cassettes in the glove box and a Western Bell patch bright on his jacket. The order was simple: payphone out of service. He did not need a map. The booth glowed like a lantern between darknesses. Inside, the air smelled of copper and breath. No dial tone. He removed the faceplate and lifted a trembling beam of light across the phone's interior. The wiring was clean, connections firm, every screw obedient under the tip of a flathead. Whatever refused to work did not live where light could see it. He set the handset back in the cradle and, before noticing he had done it, listened for a ring. Across the road, Riker finished locking the gate and killed the marquee one letter at a time, and the night grew a little larger. Evan tested the line at the junction. The meter needle jumped, fell, and jumped again, like a startled pulse learning its own rhythm. He reseated the leads and a thin tone rose, steady, innocent, as if the world had remembered how to speak. The coin return gave him a quarter, a dime, and 2 pennies that did not belong to any bookkeeping. They clicked together like teeth and warmed his palm. He pocketed the extra copper and dialed the test number. 2 rings followed by crosstalk, voices layered behind static, a language worn away yet stubbornly present. He ended the call, wiped the mouthpiece out of habit, and turned toward his truck. The phone began to ring. It was not only an electric tone. It carried a breath, a chest, a human interval. The hair on his arms rose in a private weather. He stepped back into the glass and lifted the receiver. A woman's voice arrived in the hiss like a coin surfacing from river silt. She wanted to know whether this was mile 19, and she sounded relieved when it was. The connection seemed to warm the skin of his cheek, as if sound preferred heat to distance. The voice had the steadiness of someone who has been waiting for a long time and does not wish to waste what remains. She called herself Lark. She said she liked the morning and hated the song. She spoke of a bridge and of water that sounded wrong. She warned him about 11. The booth, she said without drama, kept what answered. Evan pressed his hand to the glass. The night outside felt room temperature, like held breath. He thought of the small knot in the coiled cord, of the wrong pennies, of the meter's jump, of everything that pretended not to be alive and occasionally failed at pretending. Lark's voice thinned, the way ribbon thins when pulled through a door that does not quite fit its frame. She said the river was higher than rain, that there was a rhythm under it not made by water, and that she would soon be alone. He checked his watch and found 10:54, as if time had been quietly shoveling past him. The line changed character, static became patience, and his own words seemed to arrive a half-breath behind themselves, as though the booth cared more about echoes than sources. He replaced the handset as carefully as if it were a sleeping hand and stood a moment in the hush that follows good manners. He reached his truck. The phone rang again, gentler, almost apologetic, and he turned the key off without thinking. Wind chimes fluttered in the hiss, then a short rain across a tin roof, then his own name shaped by a mouth he could not see. Lark described a set of near futures with the clarity of someone who has watched them occur, the bridge stepping down from its piers, the diner sign leaping once and vanishing, the wires going slack in a single soft motion. Riker would hear it from his porch and call no one, because some men knew which systems answered and which did not. "Do not stand in the glass," the voice insisted. The glass kept what answered. Evan stood with his forehead against the cool panel and tasted the old stubbornness that keeps a person inside an hour when leaving would be easy and kind. The line was full, Lark said, of those who had refused to end a sentence. He asked for a proof he could carry. In answer, memory shifted slightly within him. 2 pennies, not his. A habit of saying goodnight to machines when rooms were empty. The copper in his pocket warmed as if it had heard its own name. Lightning bloomed low over the scrub, and in the momentary light he could almost see the river relearning its mouth and the booth enduring without heroism, a throat that remembered a song no one intended to sing again. He looked at his watch, 10:59, the minute held like glass in a frame. Across the road, a screen door moved. A hand lifted and fell, which can be courage when nothing else is available. Evan pressed the receiver down until the cradle clicked, the small exact sound that marks an ending done properly. The booth did not ring again. He stepped into wind that was not there and into rain that had not begun and drove without mirrors so the road could do the counting and his hands could forget. By morning, the river had carved a new mouth and brown water hugged the weeds where a sign had been. The booth remained. If you pressed your ear to the glass you could hear coin against coin, a thumbprint making its case, a breath held too long, all the quiet conversations a town keeps with itself when no one claims to be listening. Lifting the receiver offered nothing, and nothing in the right hour can be mercy. Years passed. Travelers said the booth rang on windless nights though the line was cut and the pole had no feed. They claimed a woman answered and called herself Lark, and that a man always hung up in time. Rikers sold earplugs and lottery tickets and watched mile 19 with the patience of a dial. Sometimes, when the wind forgot itself, he heard four small sounds drift across the road. Coin, coin, click, breath. The story never flourished into spectacle because systems are not ghosts and do not care to be famous. A system keeps rules, makes trades, and accepts endings when offered. The booth kept what answered and let go what hung up, and it stood patient in its square of light while the town practiced the oldest work it knew, listening hard enough that silence could be heard. Once each year, always on a windless night, it rang exactly twice, one for the penny he kept and one for the penny he returned. People who paused far back from the glass could feel a small rhythm arranging itself around them, like a town measuring its own pulse without panic. Coin, coin, click, breath. Coin, coin, click, breath. It was neither warning nor prayer. It was the shape of a choice made correctly and allowed to remain so, the ordinary miracle of a man who decided to go home.